Before I get into today's case, I just wanted to take a moment and sidestep from my usual content to acknowledge the tragedy that's currently underway in Ukraine. I want to send my thoughts out to everyone, those who may not directly be impacted, but are mentally impacted by the visuals and by hearing what's happening to innocent people in the world. And I especially want to send my thoughts out to those who are directly impacted by this awful, destructive tragedy and people who may know someone who is directly impacted by this. It's a very hard time, and it's a situation that I think most of us never imagined we'd actually live through. With that being said, I will have resources in the description box if you are in a position to directly help those in need in Ukraine. There are relief efforts taking place right now, and if you are in a position to donate or help in any way, there will be links for you to explore to do just that. I know that this is different from my usual content, but I felt I would be remiss not to acknowledge the reality of what's happening in our world right now and unfolding before our eyes in a way that I truly just never imagined was possible. So thank you guys so much for stopping by the video today, and let's go ahead and get into it. Hello my amazing people, and welcome back to my channel. If you're back, if you are new, welcome to my channel. I'm Shayna and I have a missing persons case for you all today. Today we'll be talking about the missing persons case of Jesus de la Cruz, which happened all the way back in the 1990s. And I usually like to give a shout out to the person who recommended cases to me, or the people who recommend cases to me, but I could not find for the life of me the message from this person who recommended this case. So if you do see this video, thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. I'm glad that I'm able to bring it to all of my viewers. And you may or may not be able to tell, but I have a sinus situation going on right now, and I'm not sick. It's literally just my sinuses, but I can breathe just fine. So I'm like clogged all up in this area here, but I really think it might just be because of the cat, because I have no other symptoms at all, and I am allergic to cats, and this is the first time in a while that he's been staying with me, so I don't know exactly what the cause of it is, but I'm pretty sure it's the cat. So thank you for bearing with me. Hopefully it's not too much of a distraction, but just my usual disclaimer, this is all information that I have found online and compiled into a video for educational purposes. Thank you so much for joining me today, and let's get started. Jesus de la Cruz was born on January 3rd, 1990, and at the time that this case took place, he was only 6 years old. He was a tiny little 6-year-old boy living in Lynn, Massachusetts with his mother. His father was in his life, but actually lived in a different state. He lived in Texas at the time, and little Jesus attended Connery Elementary School at the time that he disappeared. He really enjoyed spending time outside with his friends, and something that he liked to do was ride his bike around the neighborhood, as boys do, and that's exactly what he was up to on Saturday, September 28th, 1996. He left his home at 2 p.m. to spend a portion of the day with one of his friends, who was a 9-year-old boy who also lived in the neighborhood, and the two just decided to spend their time playing in Bennett Circle, which is a street very close to Jesus's home. It's parallel to his home, just a few houses down from where he lived. And he actually had this pink Huffy bicycle that he managed to get 2 flat tires on this day in September. So when the two were getting tired and ready to go home, it was around 6 o'clock, and since he had 2 flat tires, Jesus couldn't ride his bike home. He actually had to walk it back home. But the journey that the two boys were making back home was from Bennett Circle, which you can see pictured here, and they made a right onto Park Street, and that was the last time Jesus's friend would ever see him. His mother, Magdalena, got home at 7 p.m. that evening and went into a panic when she realized that he wasn't in the house. She walked around the neighborhood, banging on doors and yelling out for her son, but when she realized that she wouldn't be able to find him after several hours, she called the police just after midnight on the morning of September 29th. Magdalena told police that her son actually had left the house at 2 p.m. like we know to play with his friend, and that while he was out with his friend, she decided that it was safe enough for her to go to her friend's house to visit for just a few hours. And she didn't think much about this decision because her friend only lived about 3 minutes away from the area that Jesus was playing in, and Magdalena knew exactly where he would be. The Lynn Police Department was assisted by state police as well as the FBI, and when Jesus's missing persons report was filed, the first thing that they wanted to do was speak to the 9-year-old boy that he was playing with that day. Police were able to get in contact with the boy relatively quickly, and luckily he was able to give a very clear and concise explanation of what happened the last time he saw his friend Jesus. He told police that the two boys were making their way near Jesus's house, actually right by his house, when the two of them were approached by a man. And he also told police that this man had a dog that was very distinctive because it had one white eye and one brown eye. And he also explained to the police that this man had a mountain bike of his own. And the man noticed that Jesus's bike had the 2 flat tires, and given that Jesus was a young boy, he asked the man if he could have his bike, since Jesus's bike had 2 flat tires. And according to the 9-year-old friend, the man told Jesus that wasn't a problem. He'd be happy to give him his bike. And then he led Jesus all the way down the street past his home towards a park that you can see pictured here. And that was the very last time the friend ever saw him. And the reason that the friend didn't also follow along with Jesus and the man was because he had very clear instructions from his father to be in a certain place at a certain time, and he didn't want to disobey his father. So that's the only reason why he didn't join Jesus when he went with this man. Jesus's friend told police that the man was a tall man, probably in his mid-20s, Caucasian, with shoulder-length brown hair. And the friend also really made a point about the dog. Apparently, this dog was seen by kids in the neighborhood before, and he really stood out because of this eye that was different, that was really intriguing for the kids in the neighborhood who never saw a dog like this before. So the police had a description of at least the person that they wanted to try to find and follow up with about where they left Jesus, what exactly happened after Jesus joined this person. And based on the description of where the friend said this all took place, they were literally right near in front of Jesus's house, basically. And he literally walked past his house with this man and would never return again. Family members of Jesus were quickly ruled out, and police knew that they had to get working on identifying who this unknown male is that Jesus's 9-year-old playmate identified to them. And it turns out that they were able to find him pretty quickly. They narrowed it down to a man who was 26 years old and lived just around the corner from Jesus. His name was Robert Levesque. Police were pretty confident that based on the description, this is probably who they wanted to talk to. When they reached out to Levesque, he denied any involvement with Jesus's disappearance, but police knew that they really wanted to look into him further. And while they began an investigation into him, they also questioned people throughout the neighborhood and set up roadblocks near Jesus's home. And the roadblocks were basically as people were driving in and out the neighborhood, police were stopping people, similar to like a checkpoint, and they were hoping to come across someone who may have been driving in the area around the same time Jesus went missing and maybe could have seen something or seen what direction Jesus went with this man, or maybe they just saw something that stood out to them as odd, but they didn't think to come to the police about it because they didn't know that this boy was missing. But unfortunately, the roadblock that police set up to question people in the neighborhood was yielding no results, but they were still hopeful in the beginning that they would be able to find little Jesus. So after digging into Levesque a little bit, something stood out to police that was very odd. They found out from his employer that the same night that Jesus went missing, this man actually called out of work. He called out of his job, didn't show up that night, so police were like, that's a strange coincidence. And they also conducted a search of his apartment and his car, and they found some very concerning items. They found duct tape, handcuffs, and a hammer, and they also found the dog that the 9-year-old boy had told them about. And at this point, all of the evidence was circumstantial, but it was like overwhelming circumstantial evidence. It's like, okay, coincidentally you called out of work that night and you have these really strange supplies in your possession. Now, you can have a hammer and duct tape, but the handcuffs stand out to be particularly odd to me. That's just my humble opinion. But maybe some people just have handcuffs laying around. I don't know. I personally don't, though. They thoroughly searched his car and his apartment, but they didn't have any luck finding forensic evidence pointing to Jesus having been there or having been harmed in any of Levesque's personal property. So they were kind of like, all right, we have to find more. We have to find more than just the circumstantial evidence. We have to find something concrete that identifies this man as an absolute suspect here. With insufficient evidence to detain him in relation to Jesus's disappearance, police decided to take a different approach. Levesque actually had motor vehicle offenses and stolen property charges that they arrested him for in October, and this arrest would give them more time to build a case against him in the case of Jesus going missing. And police were disappointed because they realized pretty quick that they were not able to find anything else. They had nothing else to go on. They really had zero evidence that Jesus was even with him that day, aside from the account of Jesus's friend seeing him walk away with this man. But they really had nothing else. There was no forensic proof that Jesus was with this man on this man's property. There was no eyewitness account except for the 9-year-old playmate that Jesus had. Police did have the 9-year-old boy come down to participate in a lineup, and unfortunately he was not able to identify Levesque in this lineup. And it's unclear if this boy's inability to identify him in the lineup kind of shifted everyone's mind, like, okay, maybe this isn't our guy, but it doesn't seem like that was the approach because this man pretty much remains a person of interest indefinitely. And the dog is the giveaway feature, right? There's, I'm sure, many men with shoulder-length brown hair who are Caucasian, but not many people have dogs with a white eye and a brown eye. It's actually ironic. My sister's dog, Dakota, has a white eye and a brown eye, but you don't see that very often. So this thing kind of stood out to the police, and in their minds, okay, he couldn't identify him in a lineup, but he's a 9-year-old boy. And also, when we have passing interactions with people, we don't always take a minute to make a mental note of what people look like. So just because he couldn't identify him didn't necessarily mean he was innocent. And while he was never charged in Jesus's disappearance, he was still considered, like I said, a person of interest for years after this day in 1996. Leads came in over the months and the years after little Jesus went missing, but a dead end was reached when there was no evidence still to prove where he had gone. And police followed up on every single lead, but it was like they were chasing a ghost. They were finding absolutely nothing. But the good news, at least, was that there were no apparent signs of foul play. No remains were ever found, and there was no evidence ever found to suggest that he was harmed. So that at least was giving people hope that he would be discovered one day, and maybe this was all just a big misunderstanding. Maybe Jesus just wandered off and got adopted by a family. That actually happens sometimes. Or maybe he was abducted and adopted, and maybe he's still alive somewhere. So it is possible. Some people had concerns about Jesus's mother, Magdalena, because of the amount of time it took her to report him missing. And the Massachusetts Department of Social Services actually accused her of neglect after Jesus went missing because of this time difference that it took for her to call and report him missing. So she got home at 7 p.m. and she didn't call and report him missing till after midnight. And it was said that, during this time she was running through the neighborhood trying to find him herself, but that is a lot of time to pass without thinking to call the authorities. So that's not to shame the mom in any way. We don't know how we would react in that situation, but to a lot of onlookers, it seemed concerning that she took so long to call. And she was interviewed by police, and she completely cooperated throughout the entire process. And police did determine that she was not involved in her son's disappearance, but speculation continued on regardless of this. There's speculation by the public that this is some sort of inside job, like somehow Jesus's family was involved in his disappearance. And there's also a theory that due to Jesus's mother's involvement with drugs, basically Jesus was kidnapped, abducted for some sort of payment or revenge, and there is no proof of this. We don't know for sure. Magdalena spoke out back then and said she feels like she's being profiled because of her ethnicity, and that she would never do anything to her son, and she actually moved to a different area in Massachusetts after this happened. Some other people speculated that Jesus's father, who is named Juan de la Cruz, abducted him. He apparently had a history of abuse, and he also threatened, apparently, Magdalena that he would come and take Jesus away from her. So again, he was found innocent. He cooperated with police, and police were able to corroborate his alibi that he actually was not even in Massachusetts at the time that his son went missing. So he is completely ruled out. I don't know. I feel like it's a little unfair, to say that, especially with parents who are grieving and mourning the loss. I think about it often when I'm covering these cases, if I'm ever in a situation where someone close to me goes missing or passes away under mysterious circumstances, how the magnifying glass would be on me and how it will probably feel to be accused of something that I know I didn't do. So I don't want to go down the road of perpetuating the story, but it is a big part of it. A lot of people truly were side-eyeing the family, and there's no way to know, but they've been determined to be innocent. But I did want to give you guys a full breakdown of what happened surrounding this case because it's not a super long one. But as of late September 2021, police still have not closed his case. It's still, as far as I know, an open case, and they're actually in the process of reanalyzing the items that they found, the duct tape, the hammer. They are in the process of basically going over all of the forensic evidence again, because now we have much more advanced and sophisticated DNA technologies than back then when this happened in the 1990s. So it is possible that reanalyzing all of the evidence could lead to a different outcome, which is that leaves us with hope, at least. But what do you guys think happened here? I wish I could say what I think happened. In a lot of cases, I feel more comfortable giving my thoughts on what happened, but on this one, it's hard because there's nothing. There were no remains found. None of his items were ever found, like none of his clothes. So it really is just like he was gone. I don't even know if his bike was ever found. That was never released either, so I'm pretty sure it wasn't, It's like he vanished off the face of the earth, which is crazy. It seems like something that is really out of a movie, because if this guy Levesque made him disappear, you would think that something would be left behind, At the time he went missing, Jesus had brown hair, brown eyes, and a piercing in his left earlobe. He has a scar above his left eye, birthmarks on his left calf, and the left side of his forehead as well. He was last seen wearing a white t-shirt, blue jeans, and brown and yellow boots. This is an age progression photo of what he most likely would look like today. He would be in his early 30s. And there was no sign of a foul play, like I told you guys. So there is a chance that he is still alive and still out there, and maybe doesn't even know that he is a missing person. If you have any information that can lead to the discovery of Jesus de la Cruz, I will have information in the description box of who you can contact. Sometimes seeing a picture can jog your memory, or hearing something can jog your memory, and you don't even remember that you were in that scenario until you get a reminder. So I'm hoping that by spreading awareness about this case, maybe someone who was there back in the 90s in the area may have seen something, or may have overheard someone talking about a boy named Jesus, or you really just never know. You never know. So I'm hoping that at least I can do my part. As far as the facts of this case go, that is all that I have for you guys. A lot of you asked about my cat in the last video. Well, actually, anytime that I have a cat in my videos, you guys ask about them. And you may notice that I don't have a cat in every video because none of the cats are actually my babies. They're actually my mom's, and sometimes I'll watch them for her. So this gentleman right here, his name is Puff Daddy, and he's actually been sick and taking antibiotics, so he's kind of just like out of it. Someone asked if he was fake in the last video because he wasn't moving. He's just been really sleepy and kind of just lounging around, but he's a sweetheart, and the sweetheart is probably the reason that I have this sinus issue going on right now, but no complaints. I actually took him back home and then decided today to go pick him back up because I don't know. I feel like I'm getting attached to him now. Let me see if he'll let me wake him up. Come here, Puffy. Come here, Babas. Ooh, good morning. Here he is. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a wonderful morning or afternoon or evening, depending on what time it is when you watch this video. You know what I'm going to say. If you made it this far, you are loyal. You really are, and I appreciate you. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Thanks so much. Peace.